Good morning, everyone. For those who don't know me, my name is Tom Coates, and welcome to the November 2023 meeting of the Richmond Ions Community Group. For those who are not familiar with Ions, it is an organization that was begun in 1973 by Edgar Mitchell, who was the lunar landing module pilot for Apollo 14. Uh, Edgar Mitchell was a Navy test pilot. He had also a PhD in aeronautical engineering, and like many of the, well, I say some of the Apollo astronauts, especially those who walked on the moon, he ended up with a metaphysical takeaway from his experience, which actually occurred when he was on his way back to Earth and looked and saw the planet Earth as a pale blue dot off in the distance, and he had a unity consciousness experience resulting from that visual, and decided right then and there to dedicate the rest of his life to exploring the frontiers of consciousness, especially the interface between science and spirit. And so the IONS was founded a couple of years later, in 1973, by Edgar Mitchell and some generous donors. And it's been going ever since. In fact, yesterday I tuned in to the 50th anniversary celebration on the internet for IONS. They had some really wonderful speakers. So we would encourage anyone who wants to have more of that to join IONS by just going on the website of the Institute of Noetic Sciences and becoming a donor and a member. Our organization here is less ambitious. We don't require a specific donation for membership. All that's required to be a member of our group is just showing up, and everyone's invited, no matter where you come from, who you are, or what your background is. And we do there's no dues to pay or anything like that, although we do have expenses, and so we pass a basket with and ask for a love offering for those who can do so at each meeting. And for those who join us online, you can do so by going on our Richmond Ions website at richmondions.com, and there's a PayPal function on there that you can make a donation. Or if you're not computer literate and you don't want to send cash in the mail, you can always mail a check or pay a check at our meetings, just to Richmond Ions. And if you send a check, you send it to the address from which my office address, from which the monthly flyer is sent, and we'll make sure it gets in the bank for your benefit and for the continuation of our programs. We are, as some of you know, one of the older Ion. We're the oldest Richmond Ions group in the world, but we're we're also one of the oldest Ions community groups on the planet, and have been in continuous operation, giving monthly programs now since January 1996. So we're getting ready to celebrate our 28th anniversary, which within the framework of IONS community groups around the world is quite remarkable. Very few have achieved anything like that. And so we're very proud and pleased. And what has made that possible is the fact that we have had not only a wonderful and continuing support from members of our community, which support has expanded as a result of COVID due to the miracle of Zoom, and also we've also had wonderful support from luminaries like our speaker today. And so this alchemy has kept us going all this time. We hope it will continue in the future, and if we have continuing support, we know it will. Um, what else? Our group, as many of you know, but some may not, has a monthly program like today on the third Saturday of each month, right here at the River Road United Methodist Church. We also have a monthly Zoom only program that's on the first Wednesday evening of each month, which is referred to as our spiritual practice series. And that the next one for that will be coming up on December the 6th. It's at 7 o'clock in the evening, from 7 to 8:30 on Zoom, and this is in collaboration with a group founded by Susanna Calvert, who is here today, and one of our steering committee members, and she will be passing out flyers for this meeting on Wednesday of the 6th of December. What else? Yeah. Yes, Martha. Yeah. Well, I think that's going to work out fine because Dr. Long's talk is a little bit shorter than some of them. It's going to be for about an hour, and then he wants people to hold questions till the end. But we should be finished here before noon, so I don't think it's going to be any issue about getting out of the hallway by 4:01. Before we get going, though, we always start with an opening meditation, and the meditation today is going to be handled by. Oh, what is that, Suzanne? Okay, what? Yeah, can you come up and announce that?
Hi there. Just a reminder that we are also offering classes with the Sanctuary of Earth on divine intelligence, and we just completed our clairaudience class, and we had good enrollment, and it's a hybrid format. So I'm gonna that email did go out, and we will send it out again with the announcement, and I'm also going to pass around a sign-up sheet here with some flyers for those that are here. So our next class is clairvoyance, starting January 9th, and then clair empathy, February 27th. So hope you can join us.
Thank you. We have got so many activities going on lately. It's too much for my old brain to keep in catalog. So thank you, Susanna. We also have, as mentioned on the fly, we have our book exchange, which I remember Robert Bushman started some months ago. There's a table in the back with books that people bring in that they are ready to let go of, and anyone who is ready to pick up a book for free, all they have to do is grab one or two or three or four or five, however many they want, on that back table, and you'll be saving whoever donated them the trouble of taking them back home. So again, we'll start now with our opening meditation by Carol Louis. Thank you.
Today's meditation is a blast from the past. Some of you will remember this. To everything there is a season. Turn, turn, turn. And a time to every purpose under heaven. A time to be born, a time to die. A time to plant, and a time to reap. A time to kill, and a time to heal. A time to laugh, and a time to weep. A time to build up, and a time to break down. A time to dance, and a time to mourn. A time to cast away stones, and a time to gather stones together. A time to love, and a time to hate. A time of war, and a time of peace. A time you may embrace, and a time to refrain from embracing. A time to gain, and a time to lose. A time to rend, and a time to sow. A time to love, and a time to hate. A time for peace. I swear it's not too late.
Thank you, Carol. Our speaker today, Dr. Jeffrey Long, is in some ways perhaps an unlikely suspect as a world-class expert on near-death experiences. He has been a radiation oncologist for 35 to 40 years, I believe, and in the 90s, apparently based on interest that was stirred by hearing talks from people like Ray Moody and others, he got interested in near-death experiences. And in 1998, he and his wife Jody, just as I think as a part of sort of a lark, set up a website and created an institute called Near Death Experiences Research Foundation, otherwise known as NDERF. And that website started attracting people sharing their stories of their near-death experiences, and not too long, it became one of the world's largest repositories of information about NDEs. Today, there are more than 5,000 experiences that are part of that database, and it is a wonderful research tool. Dr. Long still is a radiation oncologist, but his avocation, at least, has been studying NDEs since the 90s and in a very serious way. In 2010, I believe it was, he came out with his first book on the subject called Evidence of the Afterlife. And in that book, it became a New York Times bestseller for the genre. And in 2016, he came out with his second book called God in the Afterlife. And I think that's partly what he's going to be discussing with us today. He also has advised that he has some brand new research findings that he's very, very excited about and wants to share. And so we look forward to that. Hopefully, we may be the first group on planet Earth to hear what those findings are. And he is, as I said earlier, his advised his talk will last about an hour. He asks that questions he'll take questions, but he asks that they be held to the end. And so, and there will be an opportunity at the end for anybody who has questions, either in the room here or online, to present them in person and so forth. So, without further ado, I give you our very, very esteemed speaker of today, Dr. Jeffrey Long. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much for that kind introduction. I sure appreciate that. We're going to have a PowerPoint show to go through today. It'll start out by focusing on near-death experiences, and then we'll get into God and some other deeper, if you will, spiritual concepts of near-death experiences. So I believe this would be a good time to go ahead and start the, let's see here. Let's see if we can get this to share here. Okay, looks like we're sharing. Can everybody see that? Are we sharing? I've got my PowerPoint slide up, but I don't know if that's...
Yes, sir, it's showing.
Okay, good. Then we're ready to rock and roll here. Okay, so as it was mentioned in that very kindly introduction, me and wife Jody started the Near Death Experience Research Foundation in 1988. And that has led to many, many thousands of people sharing near-death experiences, by far the largest publicly accessible collection of near-death experiences in the world. So this is indeed the largest study of near-death experiences ever reported, and we're going to get into some of the previous discoveries that have made in this research and get into some of the latest research discoveries, literally only a few weeks old. But as was mentioned, in 2010, I published my first book, Evidence of the Afterlife, The Science of Near-Death Experiences. Within 8 days, it was a New York Times bestseller. And so that completely changed my life. I'd been working in semi-secret prior to that time because as a physician and radiation oncology, by the way, the use of radiation to treat cancer is my medical specialty. And I was concerned about any attitudes of hospital administrators or patients or anything, which was fortunately over concerned, as I'm well aware of today. But anyway, ended up, because I was a physician and had written a New York Times best-selling book regarding near-death experiences, ended up on the NBC Today show 3 times, O'Reilly Factor, and that is one tough son of a gun, Dr. Oz show twice, CBS Inside Edition, History and National Geographic. This is just a partial compilation of some of the national television I've been on. I was even asked to talk in the New York Academy of Sciences. And there's really been extraordinary local interest when this book broke out when I was practicing down in southern Louisiana. And I talked about every local group you could shake a stick at down there. That was fun. But guess what I've been up to in terms of media very recently? There it is. The movie After Death is a near-death experience themed movie. And that just came out a few weeks ago. I was actually interviewed and in part in that movie. So if for anybody that's interested, it's After Death is an interesting perspective on near-death experiences, and I served as one of the experts that they interviewed as part of that. There's wife Jody and me at the premiere of the movie. Yeah, that's their red carpet event. So that was literally just a few weeks ago, and very exciting as we were involved in actually 2 premieres of a major theatrical release. It's turned out to be one of the most popular, most viewed documentary movies in many years. So it's doing very well, and it's been very exciting to be a part of that. The other thing that's important to know as I go through some of the information here, it's going to sound quite remarkable, but you need to be aware of this. In 2021, a billionaire by the name of Robert Bigelow, which is the director of the Bigelow Institute for Consciousness Studies, I'll refer to it as BICS, he had an essay contest seeking the best scholarly evidence of life after death. And these were big essays, 25,000 word essays. They had actually over 1,000 people submit their essays, and a panel of 6 very knowledgeable judges picked a little over 200 of them to review in depth. So what I'm going to be presenting today is a compilation of data from that. And please be aware that while I'm presenting some rather remarkable findings from my study, this went through what is probably among the most stringent scholarly peer review possible. 6 judges picking out reviewing over 200 essays. And I was actually in the runner-up winning group. And in this BICS essay contest, near-death experience was the most common essay topic as being evidence of life after death. So be aware this is going to be predominantly my original research. And I think hopefully you will agree with the judges that this is among the strongest scientific evidence for an afterlife that I am aware of. Above and beyond that, there was another scholarly group out of Europe that went through all the winning essays and tried to pick out the top essays in that BICS contest for having the best scientific evidence, strength of scientific evidence of the essays that won any money in the contest. And boom, there I am as being one of the top 6 essays in terms of the strength of the scientific evidence. And by the way, this was interestingly with the BICS contest, that was a big prize. I was flipping through my email one day and saw an email that said you won $50,000. So ordinarily you delete that, right? And my finger was on the mouse, and then I thought, wait a minute. And that was a prize I won for being in the runner-up group for this BICS contest. So very exciting times, as well as very strong validation of the rigorous scientific scholarly content of what you're about to hear. So let's push on here. What exactly is a near-death experience? I'm sure a lot of you know, but just to get everybody up to speed, a near-death experience is exactly what the name implies. You're near death. In other words, you're so physically compromised that you're unconscious or clinically dead with an absent heartbeat. So by the very definition of unconscious, you should have no conscious, organized, lucid experience. And yet they do. Near-death experiencers have a very lucid, organized experience, which we'll talk about in a bit, at the time when consciousness should be impossible. Now, no 2 near-death experiences are the same, but for me and other researchers, if you look at large numbers of them, you see a very consistent pattern of elements, characteristics, or what occurs during the near-death experience, and typically in a very consistent order. So that's a near-death experience here. Okay, I think we have, there we go. Actually, it's now over 25 years of research. I started in 1988. In August of this year, we crossed our 25th year of researching near-death experience. The NDERF.org, that's the website of the Near-Death Experience Research Foundation. It's a public service. Certainly involves, we got a lot of NDE research posted on that. And as we go through this, I want you to recall a very basic principle of science, and that is what is real is consistently observed. And over, we're going to see overwhelming consistency in some of these aspects of what occurs during a near-death experience. Special thanks to wife Jody. She's a licensed attorney, and yet she stepped down from that position to work full-time on our near-death experience research and website. I absolutely could not have done this without her ongoing substantial support. She's the webmaster of the NDERF website and has done a fantastic job. But let's push on a little bit here. Who exactly has these near-death experiences? Well, in 1981, a Gallup poll was published suggesting perhaps as many as 5% of United States adults had a prior near-death experience, and several other surveys in other countries suggest it's about that percentage. We cannot predict, however, at the time of a life-threatening event, who will or will not have a near-death experience or what the content will be. So that's interesting. And it's important to know that when a life-threatening event happens, say a heart attack, cardiac arrest, only about 10 to 20% of those nearly dying will have a near-death experience. 80 to 90% do not have a near-death experience. I actually co-authored a scholarly book chapter, and officially we don't know exactly why some people have an NDE and some don't, although I have a hypothesis. Bottom line is, folks, near-death experiences can happen to children and adults, physicians and scientists, clergy, religious, and atheists, and even those who never heard of near-death experience and didn't think anything like that was ever possible. It's an equal opportunity experience. Anyone can have a near-death experience at any time during their life. Now, as we go on with the research here, it's important to know that near-death experience research has now reached the point of being a mainstream scientific topic. There are literally hundreds of prior scholarly articles that have been published in some of the leading medical and scientific journals. So near-death experience is recognized as a phenomenon that really does occur. The only controversy is about why, which we'll get into. So as we go through this, please be aware that the findings of my research are by and large corroborated with prior scholarly research, typically with smaller studies. And of course, there's a Bix essay contest where there was an extensive review of the prior literature on near-death experience, again, consistent with the studies that I will be presenting here as we go along. So what we're going to do, folks, here is this will be the first of 12 lines of evidence for the reality of near-death experience and its consistent message of an afterlife. So let's start off with this. As noted by the very definition of near-death experience, it's occurring at a time when they're physically unconscious or even clinically dead without heartbeat. To understand how incredible that is, cardiac arrest, if you will, severe heart attack, is a common precipitating event for a near-death experience. Well, immediately following cardiac arrest, blood immediately stops flowing to the brain. The EEG, or electroencephalogram, is a measure of brain electrical activity, and that goes absolutely flat in about 10 to 20 seconds. There is no measurable cortical brain electrical activity. And yet, this is the time by the hundreds, if not thousands, of near-death experiences occur. A critical question we asked in our survey, and you'll keep seeing that number of 834. That was 834 near-death experiencers that answered the questions on the most recent version of our website survey. And that was the same group of 834 near-death experiencers that I submitted to my Bix essay and won that big runner-up prize. But one of the critical survey questions that we asked is, how did your highest level of consciousness and alertness during the experience compare to your normal everyday consciousness and alertness? Well, look at that. Nearly 80% of people having a near-death experience said that they had more consciousness and alertness than normal. Astounding when you consider that they were physically unconscious or clinically dead. Maybe another 17% normal consciousness and alertness, and less than 5% actually had less consciousness and alertness. So again, near-death experiences seem to be a hyper-alert degree of consciousness going on at a time when consciousness shouldn't be impossible. And moreover, we found that near-death experiences are remembered absolutely verbatim years to decades later. And that's been found in both prospective and retrospective studies. Again, all pointing to the fact that near-death experiences are a very special type of consciousness and quite unlike our normal everyday physical brain consciousness. But that's number one. There's number two. A common occurrence in near-death experiences is an initial element of a near-death experience. In other words, boom, they're unconscious or clinically dead, and their consciousness arises from their physical body, their point of reference, typically going above their physical body. That occurs in about 45% of near-death experiences, and the other 55%, boom, they're away from observing ongoing earthly events. But of the 45% of near-death experiences that have an out-of-body experience, they're observing ongoing earthly events, often including the frantic efforts of others trying to resuscitate them and bring them back to life. So here's their consciousness above their body while they're unconscious or clinically dead. So an obvious research question here is what they're seeing in that out-of-body experience. Is it real? Well, there's been two good prospective studies, a prospective study, Dr. Sabom and Dr. Sartori did a prospective study and found that yes, what they are seeing virtually always seems to be accurate down to the finest details, and that's absolutely inexplicable. There's a Dr. Jan Holden reviewed all the near-death experience literature many years ago and had a very stringent criteria. In other words, if there was any apparent inaccuracy in what they were observing while they were in that out-of-body state, that went into the inaccurate file. So even with this stringent criteria, 92% of these out-of-body observations were without any apparent inaccuracy whatsoever. But the biggest study of all is what I did, the NDERF, Near-Death Experience Research Foundation study, where we had, I meticulously went through 287 described out-of-body observations, and they were considered to be real if there was no apparent inaccuracy, either as described by the person having the near-death experience or by my own personal assessment. And so again, with fairly stringent criteria again, nearly 98% of these out-of-body observations were without any apparent inaccuracy. And I mean, these are very detailed. Who came in, who resuscitated them, what was going on in the operating room, what they said, where the crash cart was. Very vivid and extremely detailed observations validated and found to be exactly accurate. And interestingly, as part of these out-of-body observations, sometimes what they're observing is a long way, mile, even miles away, sometimes from the physical body. And once again, when they recover from that close brush with death and go check out their observations, almost invariably what they see was pinpoint accurate down to the finest details. And these are observations like hundreds of yards, even over a mile away, far outside of any possible physical bodily awareness. So again, further strong evidence that the consciousness apart from the body, out-of-body experiences, is absolutely real based on multiple studies, both prospective and retrospective, including my large retrospective study. So, but that's just number two. Here goes number three line of evidence for the reality of near-death experience. Now, blindness can vary. I mean, you can be born blind or you can develop blindness in your life. The degree of blindness can vary anywhere from partly blind through legally blind to complete blindness. Remarkably, near-death experiences in the blind, including those totally blind from birth, have been reported, and these are typical near-death experiences, and they include vision, which, again, should be impossible. Let's just give an illustrative near-death experience to point that out. Marta was a 5-year-old girl. She was legally blind and got loose from her parents. And here's what happened. She roamed into a lake and had a near-death experience. In Marta's own words, I breathed in the lake water and promptly lost consciousness. I was pulled out by a beautiful woman who was dressed in a bright white light. She looked into my eyes and asked me what I wanted. I was completely satisfied, and at first I could think of nothing. Finally, it occurred to me that I wanted to take a trip around the lake. In my journey, I saw detail I would never have been able to see in real life. By simply intending, I could go anywhere, even to the tops of trees. I was legally blind. For the first time, I could see leaves on trees, birds' feathers, birds' eyes, details on telephone poles, and in people's backyards that was far more clear than 20/20 vision. Amazing. She's absolutely fascinated by things we would consider mundane: telephone poles, leaves on trees, birds' feathers. If you're seeing it for the first time, as Marta did, absolutely fascinating, absolutely wondrous. And there's Marta blind during her near-death experience with, as she described it, far more clear than 20/20 vision. We have now a small series of people that were either substantially visually impaired or legally blind, all of whom had at least normal and much more likely supernormal vision during their near-death experience. Interestingly, by the way, getting back to when they're born, and I interviewed a Vicky who was born totally blind, and she had a near-death experience as a result of an auto accident. And to answer a common question after I say that, no, she wasn't driving. She was a singer. She was a professional singer and was being driven home after singing at a bar by an unfortunately inebriated patron. Had a bad car crash. First time she saw her body was she was having an out-of-body experience over her body, and she went on to have a stunningly visual near-death experience, even though she was born totally blind from birth. Her vision is not uncommonly what is described in near-death experiences, and that was 360-degree vision. She was simultaneously able to process visual information in front of her, back of her, up, down, right, left, technically spherical vision. And in fact, when I interviewed Vicky and explained to her how the rest of us in the world have this so-called pie-shaped visual field because of the location of our eyes in our eye sockets in our skull, Vicky literally laughed at me because she didn't think that was possible at all, because her entire life experience with vision during her near-death experience was that phenomena of spherical vision. So already you would probably be aware that that's some pretty powerful evidence for the reality of near-death experiences and its ongoing message of an afterlife. Well, heck, what do skeptics say? I say over 20, it's probably over 30 different explanations of near-death experiences have been brought up by skeptics over the decades. And I've heard them all, an unbelievable variety of physiological, psychological, cultural, so-called explanations by the skeptics. Now, you might be sitting there going, well, wait a minute, why are there way over 20 skeptical explanations? And the answer to that, folks, is very simple. Skeptics themselves, as a group, simply cannot agree on any one or several of their skeptical explanations of NDE that they accept as a group as adequately explaining near-death experience. Bottom line, skeptics can't explain anything that we're discussing today as a line of evidence, let alone the totality of evidence for the reality of near-death experiences. They keep trying, though. But moving on, line of evidence number 4 for the reality of near-death experience. Okay, if you're under general anesthesia, as I'm sure the great majority of you have been, under adequate general anesthesia with that blanket of sleep, consciousness is impossible. I mean, you're able to perform major surgery like that. Unfortunately, at times there is cardiac arrest during general anesthesia, which is obviously very carefully monitored by the anesthesiologist with specialized equipment, very well documented. That can occur as a result of an unexpected complication of surgery, anesthesia, or as a complication of the life-threatening event that led to often emergency general anesthesia and surgery. So I found 23 near-death experiences that occurred while they were under general anesthesia. Bottom line is they occur, and they were very typical near-death experiences, often that out-of-body experience describing their own cardiac arrest observed from inside the operating room and the frantic efforts of the team there to try to bring them back to life. And believe me, when someone codes in the operating room unexpectedly, it is not like on Hollywood. It is frantic. There can be unprofessional behavior, and the crash cart does not magically appear quickly. Anyway, I studied 33 elements, or what occurs during the near-death experience, and compared the 33 elements of those 23 general anesthesia near-death experiences to near-death experiences occurring under all other circumstances. So 32 of the 33 elements occurred equally often, no statistical difference between whether you were under general anesthesia or not. The only difference is under general anesthesia, they were statistically more likely to have a tunnel experience. I don't know why. But the key question that we alluded to earlier, what was your level of consciousness and alertness during the experience? No statistical difference at all between the two groups. So here are people under general anesthesia that shouldn't have a conscious experience. Their heart stops and they shouldn't have a conscious experience, and yet they're having that same typically supernormal level of consciousness and alertness during their near-death experience as everybody else does in a near-death experience. Well, here's an interesting characteristic of near-death experience: a life review. Well, what happens during a life review? This occurs when they see a portion or even all of their prior life. And that's a vivid illustration of just how accelerated consciousness can be during a near-death experience. I mean, here are people who have typically lived decades, and yet here they are reviewing their entire prior life, which is absolutely amazing. And yet we see this. I mean, we have hundreds of examples of this. They're not rare. In my NDERF study, I studied 88 near-death experiences, which was life review occurring in 14% of all near-death experiences. So again, as a researcher, I asked, well, is there any reason to doubt the reality of what they saw in that life review, either by what the near-death experiencers have to say or by myself? Is there anything that looks unreal, in other words? And the bottom line is what I call perfect playback. In other words, what they see in the life review seems to have absolutely previously occurred in their life, even if they forgot it. And a classic example is they may see something back in an era when they were a toddler during their life review. And they may then go ask their parents, did this really happen? And invariably in our study, what they saw, long forgotten, not remembered, was verified as really happening. So that is again, a strong line of evidence that the life review, that they occur at all with such a dramatic amount of material processed during a near-death experience, and the validation of the memories, even if forgotten, is certainly another significant line of evidence. Now, why did I put in Fear Not the Life Review? Well, that's a good question, and I'll answer that. The very first talk I ever gave this in Southern Louisiana, I got into the life review of near-death experiences, and I noticed the audience looked a little concerned. There was some fidgeting, and I couldn't help but note a bit of anxiety. And I kind of thought to myself, geez, first talk, did I say something wrong? Did I blow this? I mean, what the heck? You'll have to do better next time. What's that all about? Well, the truth came out when the audience came up and started asking questions after my talk. And basically, there were some folks saying, Dr. Long, I've done some things in my life I'm not proud of. What if I have an awful life review? And I went, oh, for Pete's sake. So no, in a life review, essentially never is there external judgment of the events of your prior life. If there's any judgment to be made, almost invariably it's by the person having the near-death experience. So you fear not the life review. And in fact, it's an incredibly valuable learning tool, as you can imagine, seeing your prior life and how you interacted with other people and the effects of that interaction with other people. A very strong learning tool, very transformative to help learn the extreme importance of love in interacting with other people. So fear not the life review, unlike the people in Southern Louisiana, I guess. All right, moving on. Family reunion. Near-death experiencers will periodically describe reunion with deceased loved ones. These are typically in unearthly, or if you will, heavenly realms. And these are joyous reunions, even if the earthly relationship was strained. But we have the loved one, even if they died of a disfiguring or chronic illness or an advanced age, they're essentially always picture perfect health when these deceased loved ones have that reunion. There's often extensive dialogue and discussion, and a very beautiful part of near-death experiences. In my study of 84 near-death, and I and other researchers have noted, geez, if you any other type of altered consciousness that we run into, dreams, hallucinations, etc., if you're going to encounter other beings that you knew in your life, it would be, say, the bank teller you did business with that day, or the family member you said hi to on your way to bed. So the great majority of dreams, hallucinations, or any other altered consciousness involves people that are alive when you had that experience. Not so in near-death experiences. In my study of 84 near-death experiences where they described the beings that they encountered, only 4% were definitely alive at the time of the near-death experience. 96% of the time they were deceased. By the way, there was a Dr. Kelly that found that same 4%. Again, overwhelming percentage of people, if you encounter a being, and this excludes like that out-of-body experience where you see ongoing earthly events. These are beings encountered in an unearthly realm that you have that overwhelming preponderance of deceased loved ones. And there's many surprise encounters. We have a small series of near-death experiencers that encounter relatives or even deceased siblings they never knew they had. Deceased siblings are typically children near-death experiencers, and they may encounter a brother or sister who will identify themselves or be recognized as a brother and sister they never knew they had. This is not unusual for parents if they have a sibling that died early in life, or even prior to the birth of this other sibling. They may want to wait until the young child is older, 10, 12 years old, and the parents, so grief-stricken, may hold off on sharing that information until they believe that child is old enough, better able to understand the concept of death. And so you can imagine the shock of parents when they have child has a near-death experience, recover and tell them about the brother or sister that they never knew that they had and the parents had never disclosed. And invariably, the gender is correct. And invariably, if there's a description of appearance, that's correct too. So again, and in fact, they can also encounter with fairly unusual, we see this, they may encounter a person in this unearthly realm and literally ask, what are you doing here? And find out that they had died prior to the near-death experience, even though that they weren't aware of that. By the way, may I add, it's not just people. Deceased pets are commonly described in near-death experiences as a joyous reunion with deceased pets. I mean, you name it, folks, dogs, cats, birds, horses. I've pretty much heard it all. These, again, joyous reunions, even if the pet died of a disfiguring illness or accident, they're essentially always picture perfect health. And as you can imagine, they're joyous. When they do encounter deceased loved ones, there's a very noticeable preponderance of deceased relatives. We got tons of grandparents, great-grandparents, aunts, uncles, etc., are commonly described as who they encounter during near-death experiences. Well, here's an interesting one too. What about near-death experiences in children? Well, yeah, that happens. And I decided that that would be an excellent study group to look at very young children. My study group was defined as age 5 and less. The average and median age in this study group was 3 years old. So this is a very young group by and large of children. It's kind of, in an important way, an ideal study group because they're culturally practically a blank slate at that age. They almost certainly don't have well-formed beliefs about religion or don't have a real firm concept of death or what would happen after you die, and almost certainly have never heard anything about near-death experiences or wouldn't understand it if they had. So once again, in this study, we looked at that same 33 elements, or what occurs during the near-death experience I alluded to earlier, and there was no statistical difference between what occurred during the near-death experiences among very young children or near-death experiences in older children and adults. So absolutely amazing that even at that very young age, they have very typical near-death experiences. And interestingly, the majority of the time these very young children have these experiences, they recognize that they're thinking at a much higher cognitive level than they were in their age-specific group in their earthly life. And they can process information they recognize far more rapidly. This study is corroborated. There's a Dr. Sutherland who reviewed the literature about children's near-death experiences. Dr. Sutherland concludes, and I do too, age does not seem in any way to affect the content of near-death experiences. Again, helping to pop the bubble of skeptics' proposal that near-death experiences might be culturally determined. It doesn't look that way. And speaking of near-death experiences not being culturally determined, one of the things that wife Jody did that was absolutely heroic was to translate the portions of the NDERF website into over 30 different languages, including some non-Western languages. So as a result of that, we have by far the largest cross-cultural near-death experience study that has ever been possible in history. We have probably at least probably about 400 near-death experiences from all around the world. From these non-English near-death experiences, once again, no surprise, near-death experience content, what occurs during the near-death experience, strikingly similar wherever on the planet you are. Now, language gets in the way. I mean, how do you translate these kind of spiritual, difficult concepts that occur during near-death experiences? Near-death experiences have often been described as ineffable, meaning difficult or impossible to describe in language. So language may get in the way, but very clearly they occur from all over, very strikingly, similarly, wherever on the planet you are. So as a researcher, I'm especially interested in near-death experiences from non-Western countries. In my BICS essay, we had about 60 non-Western near-death experiences. And because translation could be a potential issue, we selected out only people from non-Western countries, that being defined as countries which were not predominantly Judeo-Christian. And these were 60 where the near-death experience was shared in English. We wanted to do it that way, feeling that the person from the non-Western country, if they knew English well enough to share it, that would be the best comparison group with English language shared near-death experiences from typical Western countries. And once again, in my analysis, the core content, what occurs during near-death experience, appears strikingly similar. And may I add, I've actually published 2 peer-reviewed articles from a work I've done with an Iranian near-death experience researcher who's studying Muslim near-death experiences in Iran. And once again, our conclusion in those published articles, content seems to be strikingly similar. The implications absolutely are enormous. It seems to make no difference, folks, whether you're, say, a Muslim in Egypt or a Hindu in India or a Christian in the United States or an atheist anywhere. Wherever on the planet you are and whatever your prior beliefs are, if you have a near-death experience, the content is going to be strikingly similar. All of this converges on the concept that indeed we are all spiritual beings in our greater reality, having a temporary human experience during our earthly life, which is amazing. But here's another one. A very important thing that happens. You could already imagine having a near-death experience is a profound event. After you recover from that life-threatening event and realize you had a near-death experience, both prospective and retrospective studies find many, many strong changes in their life. There is, not surprisingly, an increased belief in the afterlife. Well, duh. They know what lies beyond death's door because they experienced it. They saw it. So obviously they have a tremendously increased belief in the reality of an afterlife. A corollary to that is, of course, reduced fear of death. They no longer fear what lies beyond the veil of death because, again, they essentially nearly died, or actually clinically were dead, and saw that consciousness survives, who they are, what they are, everything they are, continuing onward. But as further after effects, they value loving relationships much more, often because of the importance of love they learned in the near-death experience. We'll get into that. They become less materialistic. They may seek vocations where they can express their newfound loving values, and relevantly, they have an increased belief in God. So these are all just a small sample of the literally dozens of observed after effects that occur after near-death experiences. And interestingly, unlike other sort of flash-in-the-pan life events, these after effects actually become stronger in the years to decades after the near-death experience. People don't change their life that dramatically in response to an event that they are suspicious isn't real or doubt its reality. People change their lives dramatically in response to an experience that they know is real, know is important, and that's why, generally speaking, why after effects occur. Okay, let's talk. Here's a nice busy slide for you. We have a survey question asking about the change in their belief in the meaning of life after death. At the top there, we asked about them to assess what at the time of their, before their near-death experience, what did they believe about the meaning and significance of our earthly lives? Okay, so top numbers and percentages, that's prior to their near-death experience. Okay, 27.5% believed that their earthly life was meaningful and significant prior to their near-death experience. But good gosh, look down below. At the current time, that being the time they shared their near-death experience, which, by the way, is an average about 15 years after the NDE, 80.4% now believe that their lives are meaningful and significant. And I would submit to you, I cannot conceive of any other single life event that is so powerfully transformative in the belief of meaning of life as a near-death experience. That is amazing. In fact, as you look down below there, virtually everybody that had a near-death experience ultimately believes that their life is either meaningful or significant, or at least probably so. So a dramatic shift from their pre-near-death experience belief systems. Well, if you like busy slides, I got great news. Here's an even busier one. Let's try to sort through this one. This is asking them about the existence of an afterlife following their near-death experience. The NDE scale is a research scale that ranges from 7 to 32. The higher the number, the deeper or more detailed the near-death experience. So what you have on the left is belief in a, so the left is at the current time or when they shared their near-death experience. They've had a chance to learn and process from their near-death experience. So for those that had a very non-detailed near-death experience, that's the NDE scale 7 to 14. If you look over at the right, before my experience, before their near-death experience, it says only 67 of that group felt an afterlife definitely existed. Bam, look to the left. At the current time, virtually everybody thinks an afterlife definitely or probably exists. But if you go down those scales, if you look down at the bottom, where that NDE scale 25 to 32, wow, look at that. If you go to the very bottom of that listing there, to the right is before their experience, and they were sort of all over the board in their belief about a near-death experience, about an afterlife existing. But for those that had the deepest NDEs scale 25 to 32, and these are profoundly deep near-death experiences, 48 out of 48 in that group said an afterlife definitely exists. So again, having a near-death experience is, especially for a deep near-death experience, seems to be almost uniformly convincing for the reality of an afterlife. Again, they've had a personal experience with a very detailed awareness of what lies beyond death's door. Well, we're humming right along here. Here's the 10th line of evidence for the reality of near-death experience. Okay, this is dang straightforward. In that same survey group of 834 people, we just say straight up, how do you currently view the reality of your experience? These are people that had an experience, a near-death experience, and they're in the best position to assess how real near-death experience is. Well, good gosh, look at that. 93.8% said their experience was definitely real, and about another 5% that the experience was probably real, and less than 2% of all those 834 near-death experiencers thought their NDE was probably not real or definitely not real. That is a profound endorsement for the reality of near-death experiences from people who actually had such an experience. And I would say, in summarizing that data, out of respect for people's ability to generally understand reality, if skeptics want to represent that near-death experiences are not real, the skeptics, need to present strong evidence that near-death experiences aren't real. And as we've noted earlier, they can't even come close to explaining any of this, let alone the totality of this. Over and over, by the way, we have people who are skeptics of near-death experience, didn't believe it can happen. When it happens to them, boom, they're typically in that understanding that the experience was definitely real group. So a near-death experience cures near-death experience disbelief, bottom line. But going right along here, now here's an interesting one. What about shared near-death experiences? These are relatively rare occurrences where two or more people have a simultaneous life-threatening event. Disaster, there's a car wreck, simultaneous, we've had a building collapse. So two or more people right at the same time have a life-threatening event. And I found 15 of these so-called shared near-death experiences where the two people having a simultaneous life-threatening event actually do share a typical near-death experience. They're able to communicate with each other. They typically, one person returns and one person does not return and ultimately goes on to that, dies irreversibly. But let's talk about that. This is illustrated vividly when William M. shared his shared near-death experience. So in William's own words, I was in the car taking my girlfriend to her parents' home in Welland. I fell asleep while driving. I then realized we were out of our bodies and flying quickly upward while holding hands. We flew straight up for about a minute. We then saw a park or countryside-like landscape. Suddenly, we encountered 4 creatures. 2 flanked each of us, and they began to separate us gently. They overwhelmed us with the feeling of the highest love and compassion beyond anything we could experience on earth. We were feeling a divine love. Therefore, we did not resist their effort. I felt sort of like a baby in a mother's arms, though it's hard to describe accurately. 2 of the creatures moved her upward toward the distant landscape, and 2 moved me back downward. I felt so much love, peace, and comfort that I wanted to protest and say, no, please let me stay here. But I heard inwardly or psychically that I couldn't stay. Next, I saw my car in flames from about a quarter mile up above. I felt a falling sensation and awakened in the car. The front was on fire. They'd had a bad accident. I moved her from leaning on me as she was when I fell asleep, knowing that her body was only an empty shell. I had left her above with the beings, and indeed, his girlfriend was dead, and they had shared a near-death experience. There's a series of about 15 of these, and this is some of the strongest evidence I'm aware of that what we're seeing in a near-death experience times thousands posted on the website is likely the initial course of events of those that die permanently and irreversibly. And again, shared near-death experiences, again, yet another profoundly significant evidence for the reality of near-death experiences. So here we are with evidence of line number 12. Is there an afterlife? Well, good gosh, I hope you're all convinced I am. From an overwhelming and deep amount of evidence, yes, there absolutely is an afterlife. Consciousness survives physical bodily death. So obviously, if there's an afterlife, well, what can we learn about it? And that's where the research gets danged interesting. So let's talk about that. There are three major afterlife concepts in near-death experiences. Now, there's many, many more, but among the most common ones discussed and represented in near-death experience is love, oneness, and certainly God. So we'll explore all the three of those very consistently observed things that are described in near-death experience. The two most common words used in near-death experiences are light and love. So we hear love discussed a lot in near-death experiences. And by the way, I studied 866 sequentially shared near-death experiences, and we could look at the top descriptive words that the near-death experiencers themselves use to describe their experience. And here we are again, folks, light, love, and God. So again, very common descriptors, words near-death experiencers using themselves to describe what actually occurred. So moving on here, aware of all that, in our most recent version of the survey of 834 people, very interested in that, I asked a very explicit survey about this. And I asked them, during your experience, these being the near-death experiencers, 834, did you encounter any specific information or awareness regarding love? Wow, look at that. 57.1% said yes. So again, remarkably, especially given that many near-death experiences are not detailed and are not really transcendent, that is a whopping high percentage. Now, following this survey question was a text box response that provided valuable insight into what information about love the near-death experiencers were encountering. So here's some excerpts that gives you the flavor of what near-death experiencers are saying when they encounter love in a near-death experience. You'll see very quickly this is far beyond anything that you are aware of with earthly love by and large. I knew that love was the greatest force around us and that we are all love, and love is the only thing that is real. Love was everywhere. It permeated the afterlife. It was incredible. Love is the root of all. It is the Alpha and the Omega. I was loved unconditionally, despite my faults and fears. I was loved, and it was unconditional. This love that I felt was unique. I felt completely safe that nothing could happen. I was no longer in pain, and all my worries that I had, fears, etc., was left behind with my body. A love so great and peaceful as though it enveloped my whole being. Felt loved and an essential part of the whole. And the entire experience was one of unfathomable love. During the experience, everything was love. I was love. The whiteness was love. The feeling of flying was love. It was awesome. And by the way, if you think that this is in any way a overstatement about love and encountering near-death experiences, we posted the hundreds and hundreds of narrative responses to that question about love in the website. And there's a URL right there. You can look at the original unedited data straight from the near-death experiencers about the overpowering love encountered in near-death experiences. I mean, by the way, that's a remarkable read if you go through those hundreds of descriptions. It can literally be life-changing to realize how deeply ingrained this overwhelming and unearthly love is during near-death experience. It's far outside of typically of what they experienced in life. Now, here's an interesting one. Over and over in near-death experiences, they talk about a mystical connection, unity, or using the stronger word oneness in near-death experiences. So that got me interested, and I asked a survey question. So the survey question of these 834 near-death experiencers, during your experience, did you encounter any specific information, awareness that a mystical universal connection or unity, oneness either does, and the survey questions say, or does not exist? There was a text box response again following this question. I had to put that or does not so that we couldn't be accused of having a leading question. And in analyzing the text box responses, basically everybody that answered yes to the survey were responding yes in the sense that they did encounter information or awareness that there was indeed a universal connection or oneness. Wow, look at that. Nearly half of near-death experiencers saying yes. By the way, that's a way higher percentage than people that describe, say, a tunnel or encountering deceased loved ones or having a life review. A profoundly high percentage of near-death experiencers coming away with this awareness that is heretofore not been discussed in essentially any near-death experience research, which is fascinating. And may I add, the concept of a mystical unity or oneness is not at all classical teaching in Western religion or cultural teaching. And yet here it is, people predominantly from Western countries having that overwhelming awareness that there is a unity or oneness. But once again, let's give some examples of that and see what they're talking about. I was aware of a oneness, a connection with God and all the other souls, but also individuality. We are all pieces of a greater whole, as I understand it, and getting back where we can all be together again, and that's, by the way, this unearthly heavenly realm, is the ultimate going home. I felt a universal connection or unity, but it didn't really seem mystical at the time. It just felt like this is how it is. I'm going to say yes, because I felt a larger than universal oneness. I felt connected to everything and everyone on earth and across the universe. I felt as if anything I said or did had greater repercussions than I could ever realize. The oneness on the other side is amazing. You become one with all of life. All is connected, all is one, and all is love. Again, hundreds and hundreds of these narrative responses are posted unedited on the NDERF website right down there. And again, even a brief perusal through those hundreds of narratives, you can realize very quickly, yes, vast numbers of near-death experiencers, approaching half, do become aware of that mystical unity or oneness. Again, remarkable, given that that's not a classic religious teaching in this day and age around here. Well, let's go up to God now. God is certainly very commonly encountered in near-death experiences. How commonly? Well, surveying those 834 near-death experiencers during your experience, did you encounter any specific information or awareness that God or a supreme being either does or does not exist? I had to throw in that or does not, again, to avoid being accused of leading questions. And as with the question about unity oneness, essentially everybody that answered yes there, that 48%, were answering yes in the sense that they encountered information or awareness, and that's during their near-death experience, that God or a supreme being does exist, not information or awareness outside of their near-death experience. Wow, how about that? Nearly half of people having a near-death experience, and from the direct survey question, during their experience, becoming aware of a God or a supreme being. Again, a phenomenally high percentage that heretofore in prior near-death experience research has not at all been hardly touched upon or emphasized. So again, let's talk about that a little bit further. Here's an analysis. Here's one of the original things that's literally research just a few weeks old. We said that there were hundreds of narratives. Actually, there were 494 narrative responses to that question about God or a supreme being. In the last few weeks, I found that I can use artificial intelligence, we'll abbreviate it AI. What I'm using is ChatGPT-4, and we can analyze very quickly mammoth amounts of narratives. And the advantage of using artificial intelligence is that it is rigorously objective. AI has no preconceived beliefs. It just simply looks at those narratives and writes out what it considers to be common themes or common characteristics of what people are describing in those narratives. So here is straight, these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 is straight from the analysis of artificial intelligence about the nature and attributes of God or the divine being. AI found that God is indeed a being or entity, and quotes from near-death experiences. The one divine loving being I met was one who joyed in my creation. Mother told me that the brilliant light came from, that was a deceased mother, by the way, told me that the brilliant light came from God. The godly being had the power to send me back, though I requested to say, and an image of God was the porthole of white light, and I spoke to him through my mind. So artificial intelligence is very aware, as the survey suggested, that there really is a God as a specific being or entity. Also, God can be an energy as an essence. And from other quotes from near-death experiences, again, this was found by artificial intelligence. For me, it was not a being as much as an energy of love. And I understand not that God exists, but that I am part of God, like an atom in a greater body. And God is love. We are all loved unconditionally by God. God's attributes were identified by AI. He is the light, the safety, and the comfort. I felt without a doubt during and after the experience that God does exist. AI identified that there can be multiple names or forms of God. And many near-death experiencers say that God is a human word and cannot begin to define the overwhelming, unearthly entity that they encounter during their near-death experience, that words, English language, all words fall short of defining God's. And AI picked out whether it's God, Buddha, or Allah. What one person thinks is God, maybe another's interpreted as dad. Well, absolutely, God exists and is called by many names. Interestingly, AI picked out that there are these higher spiritual beings reporting to God, and had an example. I felt like there were beings that were of a higher nature and that reported to something higher than them, probably God. Well, really, AI, and the AI actually found many more than just these 5. The unity was picked up, the love was picked up. But I asked AI specifically to see if there was any inconsistency in the descriptions of God in these 494 narrative responses. And very importantly, AI's response was, there were no inconsistent themes identified based in the provided descriptions. This suggests that the descriptions in the document are largely in agreement with each other in the way they portray God or the divine being. So the bottom line is, folks, we have overwhelming consistency in the descriptors of God in a near-death experience. These descriptors are not at all explainable by pre-existing religious and cultural beliefs. Strong emphasis on love, unity, oneness are good examples of that. And looking specifically for inconsistencies through the rigorously objective lens of artificial intelligence, no inconsistency identified. When I pulled this out as an artificial intelligence investigation, I realized that this is profoundly important. We've looked at both consistency and tried to find inconsistency, and the bottom line is this obliterates the foundation of atheism. The foundation of atheism is that there is no evidence for God. I would submit to you, you can already see overwhelming evidence of God in hundreds of narrative responses, remarkably consistent through both my own analysis and artificial intelligence analysis, and a remarkable lack of inconsistency, both with my own assessment and the objective artificial intelligence assessment. So this is, God does exist. People are encountering God during near-death experiences. And this is certainly some of the strongest evidence for the reality of God that I am aware of on Earth. Let's talk a little bit about God in near-death experiences from near-death experiencers' own words. In August of 1985, when I was only 5 years old, I was on a boat trip on a local lake. I was bitten by a mosquito and developed encephalitis. I died and drifted into a safe black void of comfort and ease, no pain and no fear. This was a place where I felt right at home. Off in the distance, I saw a very small light. It was drawing me to it. I felt myself rushing toward this light with a great amount of speed. I was not frightened. When I came into the light, it represented peace and joy, but most of all, a deep, unconditional love. The light was sparkling, glowing cloud. From inside, I heard a voice in my head, and I knew it was God. Since my parents never discussed God or took me to church, I really didn't know how I knew, but I did. Furthermore, I felt like this was my real home, this place where I was with this beautiful light, which was God. I felt surrounded by the light and was one with it. The feeling was like being scooped up and being held by my daddy when a barking dog was biting me just a few months earlier, only more so, 5-year-old encountering God. And let's talk to Loney about her encounter with God. In that same moment, God, showed me the golden threads interwoven that made me, me, but that I did not exist alone. My golden energy threads extended throughout the universe, and they were not mine at all. We, humanity, are all woven together, and we are all part of God's tapestry of sorts. There are really no words that can adequately describe this. In between the golden threads, however, he leaves each of us empty spaces. The way he showed me this is that we can fill up these empty spaces between the weave of threads with light or with darkness during our lives. We are made of God, but we are given free will. He has only to glance at us to know how we spent that free will. There is no way to hide any of it. And here's again just some further descriptions of God and near-death experiences. God is everything, energy, the fabric of everything. You know it is a supreme being by the all-encompassing love and warmth within and outside of you, all around you and through you, in every part, in every moment. I did not believe in God before my experience. The presence of God, the forms in which God presented itself to me were undeniable. I wasn't just given information, I experienced the information, so I would absolutely know it to be true. Here's another fascinating thing. Artificial intelligence is now able to create pictures, gorgeous pictures, and AI's comments below are what it created. This image captures the beautiful, holy, and light-associated ethereal essence of God as encountered in near-death experiences. The image offers a unique and profound representation of this spiritual concept. This is a unique creation by God. As you look through this, it is actually a profoundly deep thing. Near-death experiences, beings typically don't have wings, and yet I think the picture established that to help portray the freedom, the ability to be unimpeded by, simply earthly physical bounds. And you sort of can see that light radiating out in all directions, seemingly impacting or being connected with all beings. An amazing artificial intelligence, and this is unique. There's no other picture that is like this on Earth because it's a unique creation by artificial intelligence. And may I add, when artificial intelligence generates pictures about near-death experience, almost certainly the great majority of what seeds its near artificial intelligence awareness and how to draw a picture comes from the NDERF website because of the thousands of near-death experiences posted there. Far, far more near-death experiences than any other source. So this is probably to a significant degree a compilation of God as discussed by people having near-death experiences on the near-death experience NDERF website. But again, a beautiful representation of that. But let's talk about God's love in near-death experience. Here's some more examples. No human can ever love with the love I felt in that light. It is all-consuming, all-forgiving, nothing matches it. It is like the day you looked into the eyes of your child for the first time, magnified 1,000,000 times. Yeah, that's indescribable. And it wasn't just that I felt unbelievable love. I was unbelievable love. God is love, and that God was within me and all of us. And I know that love is all there is, and that God loves all his children deeply and equally. There are no stepchildren in the family of God. We are all divine, and God loves us infinitely. Again, we have hundreds of descriptions of God in that URL down below there. Again, as artificial intelligence and any person who goes through any number of them can quickly see, yes, God is real, not explainable by pre-existing religious or cultural beliefs, and remarkably consistent in near-death experiences. Well, let's take God's love and run a little bit further. What about love? Okay, this is another artificial intelligence generated beautiful picture. From AI, this image envisions the spiritual essence of love in a spirit heavenly realm as described in near-death experiences. The image portrays this concept with a unique perspective and artistic interpretation. Again, you get a sense from this picture, what's been previously described in words, now described in pictorial form. Love permeating you get throughout all, a part of everything and a part of everyone in that unearthly or heavenly realm. A truly, and the concept of light and the essence of love throughout the universe. Beautiful pictures. I could sit here and look at this for a long period of time. And then finally, we talked about unity or oneness. Well, that unity or oneness, not surprisingly, extends to God in near-death experiences. And near-death experiencers say, I did not see God with eyes, but God was everything and everywhere. There was no separation felt in the experience. I saw the radiant sea of light we call God, and I swam in it as one with God. There was no religious God. There seemed to be a supreme being, though I felt that we are all part of that being, and we are all one. One is God. The separation of one to two is life. And just to help drive home pictorially about this amazing concept, this unearthly concept of unity with everything and with God, once again, we turn to artificial intelligence, asking it to draw a picture portraying that unity. So here AI says this is an image that captures the mystical oneness and interconnectedness of all things, as often described in near-death experiences. These images feature an intricate network of light and cosmic elements centered around a radiant human figure. Vividly, you can see if a near-death experiencer encountered anything like this, you can see the tremendous difficulty that just earthly words would take to describe a fantastically unearthly experience, just portrayed in a snapshot of an unearthly picture about the unity and oneness that is for all of us and for all of eternity. So what can we say in conclusion? Well, obviously, multiple converging lines of evidence find a reality of near-death experience and its consistent message of an afterlife, a wonderful afterlife. This has the strength of multiple lines of evidence. Alternative skeptical explanations of near-death experience fail and fail miserably. The evidence of an afterlife shows, and we know something about it, the vital importance of love, oneness, and certainly God. This is indeed, for all of humankind, a powerful message of hope and inspiration. So just a few key messages from all this evidence. Death is not the end, but very much a beginning. There is an afterlife, a wonderful afterlife for all of us. And we are all, both in our earthly lives and in our eternal lives, one and united. The NDE message of an afterlife with God is among the most powerful and positive message conceivable for all of humanity. So thank you all. That concludes it, and I'm now certainly open for questions.
Hi, Jeffrey.
That's a lot to digest, I know.
Hi, Jeffrey. Suzanne Munson here.
Yes.
Remember me? Yeah.
Uh-huh.
2 years ago, Tom Coates, Carol Louie, my husband, Jim Jernigan, and I were pleased to have dinner with you in Richmond. And just a little background on that. I was on the program committee of the Women's Club of Richmond, and I snuck you in as a topic. They were very skeptical about it. They were very afraid that people would think that was just a topic too far for the Women's Club. And lo and behold, and you gave a wonderful talk very similar to this, and lo and behold, it was the best attended program of the year.
Wow.
So many hundreds of people, Zoom and in person. And so I'd like to say that I'm one of those people. There's other research that shows that even if you didn't have a near-death experience yourself, if you listen to and read enough accounts, you are moved by it and changed by what you learn. And I'm one of those people. And I have read, 20 books about the near-death experience. And I've probably listened to 300 accounts online. and I listen to them as I go to sleep because they really help me with my understanding of God, that we do have a God of love. A lot of us do question that, and I now totally believe that as a result of the near-death experience research that you and others have done.
Yeah, thank you for those kind words. You've made an important contribution too, in the spectrum of spiritual experiences that all converge on the understanding that there is a life after death, and a wonderful one for all of us.
Hey, Price Wood, circumstances. I hate to bring this example up, but whether you're Israel-Palestine conflict, and whether you're Jewish watching your family being killed, or the other way around, and they have a near-death experience, do they feel love and unity after that kind of death or experience?
Yes, absolutely. Regardless of the circumstances, whether they died in war, whether they went down fighting, they're still going to have, during the near-death experience, they're going to have a profound awareness of the deeper spiritual truth that we're all one, and that love is the predominant power of the universe. Understand that our earthly lives, that's literally, from all near-death experience evidence, the tiniest slice of our eternal earthly life. What are by far eternal and infinite spiritual existence far transcends the issues that we have, political or otherwise, here in our earthly life. But over and over again, doesn't make any difference what led up to the near-death experience. When that occurs, the sense for the around half of people, that especially those that have had detailed near-death experiences, is that there is that unity, that oneness, that we're all connected, and that love is the dominant force, and an earthly love, a love that transcends, as you noted from just a few of those examples, a love that transcends anything we could possibly know in our earthly life.
That's incredible. Thank you. Yeah. Too bad we can't get that out to all the live people.
Yeah, true.
So anybody on Zoom, if you'd like to ask a question, just raise your hand. I think Barry, you wanted to ask a question. Why don't you unmute yourself?
There you go. Hi. Yeah. My question is, have you had a near-death experience?
Yeah, good question. I have not. I should be disclosing that. So, and this is interesting too, and it's probably very relevant. It's been noted that people that have near-death experiences generally don't become near-death experience researchers. They don't have to. They're big questions about its reality, what it means, and how their life changed. You know, they understand from their own personal experience, and they are not intrigued or wondering about near-death experience as a whole, because they know darn good and well from their personal experience. People like me that have not had a near-death experience, we're the ones that ask, is near-death experience real? How do we know? What is the evidence? And can learn about that as best we can without having personally experienced it. Now, I've had some, several, mind-boggling spiritual experiences, but they were not near-death experiences.
Well, thank you, because you clarified something for me, because I've had 2 experiences, and it was just what you said. The one with the tunnel was when I was having a C-section in the hospital, so I was under anesthesia. The other one, I was out of my body, over my body after a car accident, and I could see the people around our car. We were upside down, and they were walking around saying, "Are they dead?" And then I came back from that. So I never got beyond that point of looking down, but there was nobody around me. I was alone. There was nothing else. So thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, certainly near-death experiences there. And you should just tell those people later, no, I'm not dead. We're just having an out-of-body experience and a near-death experience. Glad you survived all that.
Thank you.
Judy, why don't you go ahead, and then we'll have Sarah in this room.
Thank you. I'm Judy Hart. I believe in reincarnation, and my question has always been, do I get to reunite with all of those people in heaven, or only the most recent version of my contacts?
Yeah. Interesting. I spent most of my life absolutely not believing in reincarnation, but my beliefs are based on evidence, and there is substantial evidence in near-death experiences. In fact, we ask a survey question. So now I believe in reincarnation based on lots and lots of evidence in near-death experiences. So while we, and certainly there's some other good evidence for reincarnation from other sources outside of near-death experiences, as best I can tell, given that we're all literally bearing souls that have an eternal and infinite connection with the afterlife, as best I can tell, based on that, it's my belief that we're all going to be reunited in the afterlife with all beings, including our distant ancestors back, vast numbers of generations. They existed, they lived, and I think that connection is eternal. So I think we'll all be a part of in the afterlife, all back together again.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Hello, I'm Sarah, and thank you so much for being here today. I really appreciate it. When you hear about near-death experience, of course, the connection with death always is related to, or at least it seems to always be related to, a traumatic event. So have you been aware of any people who have experienced near death without a traumatic event?
Yeah, absolutely. We have hundreds and hundreds, if not over 1,000 of experiences that are NDE-like. As a researcher, I have to go with the term near-death experience, meaning an experience that occurred near death, and near death means physically near death. That was Raymond Moody's original concept in 1975, and actually a researcher consensus of an article I co-authored, published in the Annals of the New York Academy of Sciences just several years ago. So that's it. You have to define your terms. You could certainly have, so that's near-death experience from what I presented today, because you have to decide that. However, your point is very well taken. You absolutely can have experiences identical in content to near-death experiences where there is no life-threatening event whatsoever. That's known often in the scholarly literature as mystical experiences. We call them sometimes spiritually transformative experiences. So we must have hundreds and hundreds of experiences like that. So your important point there to take it and run is that near-death experiences as a group is a subset of that bigger umbrella of spiritual experiences. These are experiences where there is an intersection of the spiritual, the something outside of our earthly everyday consciousness, that connection to the eternal and infinite divine that can manifest itself in earth in a whole variety of experiences and under a whole variety of circumstances. Near-death experiences are just the best studied, but there is a whole array of things. If I ran out of things to do, I'd love to go write up our results from hundreds and hundreds of these near-death experience life experiences, but they are absolutely very valid, very real spiritual experiences that also can be profoundly informative to the individual and to others they share it with, and profoundly life-changing. So they're all part of the greater reality, the experiences that are like near-death experiences with those same spiritual truths under any circumstances. We often see them, prayer, meditation, are some of the more common non-traumatic events that seem to be associated with these types of spiritual experiences.
Thank you.
I thank you for your time today. I guess I'm going down the same road. One of the question I have is, a friend of mine's a PA, and she said that when people are in her care that see loved ones coming to them while they're in the hospital or wherever, and they tend to pass a few days later. Mm-hmm. Is that like a conscious near-death experience?
Yeah, okay, that's a great question. Those are what we would call nearing end of life experiences. If it's, some days away from the time they died, if that's an experience actually immediately time framed, immediately prior to death, those can be deathbed visions. You can see scores and scores of those experiences that have been shared with us over the years. If you go to another one of our websites, oberf.org, and then just look for NELE, or nearing end of life experiences. So that's yet another example, and an important example of the spectrum of spiritual experiences. there can be many of these nearing end of life experiences where people see their deceased loved ones fairly common, or are aware of, or may even describe a vision of those being people dying of an unearthly, beautiful, heavenly realm, just like they were described in near-death experiences. They may sense that overwhelming sense of love that near-death experiencers described on very uncommon occasions. There can even be shared experiences among the people around them that don't have a life-threatening event, that aren't dying with the people that are dying. So that's all yet another, that could be that's a whole nother talk in itself right there, of that spectrum of very real spiritual experiences that occur under such circumstances. And like I said, you can see scores and scores of those accounts on the OBERF.org website. We're fascinated by them also.
I have a question. Can you talk more about the life review process? And do we know if it's chronological? Does it happen from a young age to an older age? And also, is a soul in that process sort of unavailable to communicate with loved ones who are still alive while they're in that process?
Sure. Yeah, good. Well, let's talk about the life review. There's a tremendous, having had hundreds of these life reviews over the years, there's quite a bit of diversity in how they occur. One of the more common ways that near-death experiencers describe them is seeing their life flash like on a screen. And that can be either like a single screen or multiple screens. They may say that if they, while that's all ongoing, amazingly, they can be often described being simultaneously aware of all their different portrayals of the life review. It may be chronological or it may not. Probably more often it's not. A common noticed thing that occurs in the afterlife is there's no sense of time. So I'm not surprised that we on Earth would expect a life review to be, you start, okay, here I was born, let's go through where I'm at today. And that's a minority of life reviews. A lot more commonly, they may skip around, although and it may not be their entire life. They may see excerpts or things sort of flash by seemingly mundane events. It isn't like your graduation or your first time you drove a car or anything like that. And yet they're overwhelmingly aware that that love was important. Now, we have a few very deep near life reviews in which they are not only aware of the events in their prior life, and in these very transcendent life reviews, they can actually feel what the other person felt like at the moment they were interacting with them during their life and during their life review. And sometimes it's a big surprise. It's not what they would have guessed during their life. And I love to give this example of that because it's cute. So there was one near-death experiencer that was having this very deep life review and saw themselves as a 3-year-old, and they were getting a bath by daddy. So daddy came in and was giving him a bath, and this 3-year-old jumped out of the bathtub and went running wet and splashing all through the house and having a good old time. But during the life review, she was aware of the sense of what her father was thinking. And her father, she was aware, had a very difficult day at work. Man, I can relate to that. And father was not at all happy about chasing the 3-year-old, splashing, wetting all through the house. But she didn't know that. There was no way she could have known that when she was a 3-year-old. And that's just a cute example. Other times they can have that interaction and realize very deeply, what they thought was a trivial interaction with the other person could ripple through their life and have a very profound impact. And once again, all focus back on realizing even a seemingly trivial expression of love, how that seemed to be a very profound impact on that person and rippled out to have far more loving consequences than just anybody could have expected from that simple act. So that's a little bit more about life reviews. Again, very, as I discussed, dramatic illustrations of the exceptional acceleration of consciousness that occurs during near-death experiences.
Jerry, why don't you unmute, and then Linda, you'll be next.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, what do we learn from NDEs? My experience is that I felt that all beings that died feel love and compassion. This brings up the question of the existence of good and evil. What does the NDE record say of this?
Yeah, evil is a very complex thing. I actually have a big write-up on that as best I can tell on the website. what it is evil on the other side, in the unearthly, if you will, heavenly realms. Evil doesn't seem to, people, near-death experiencers will often say evil simply cannot exist in this realm of God and love and light and beauty. However, there are some relatively rare near-death experiences that do describe a hellish realm, but in the afterlife, but it seems to be segregated off. It's literally not a part of heaven, unearthly realms. People, about half the time near-death experiencers are aware of, or is pointed out in their near-death experience journey. Another half, and again, very rarely, people seem to actually be in this unearthly or hellish realm, and it is darn sure evil. What's going on here, as best I can tell, is that how could evil exist like that, even segregated off, not able to, impact other beings or souls in the unearthly life? As best I can tell, that would be expected if we all have free will, both in our earthly life and in our afterlife. And there seems to be, mercifully, an extremely small number of spiritual beings in the afterlife who, manifesting free will, choose to be evil, choose to be the dark souls. And to them, their heaven is to be around other dark soul, evil souls like themselves. That's literally their heaven. It's their choice. It's their free will choice. And so if you're going to have free will in the afterlife, then it's almost a certainty you're going to have a confined environment where these souls can exist and carry out their evil. So that's evil in the afterlife. Evil in the earth is clearly unfortunately, a human construct. God does not choose evil, does not create evil in this earthly life, as best I can tell, and that's based on a mammoth amount of evidence. It's simply evil in earthly life tends to be a choice, unfortunately, a free will choice of those of us living here. That's basically free will choice evil. Of course, some people call evil natural disasters, and well, this earth ain't perfect, and that's really not evil manifesting. That's really not technically evil. It's bad things happen. But the evil, as far as a choice, as long as we as souls have free will, we can choose love or we can choose evil. I hope that answers your question. It's complex.
Yeah, it's definitely complex. And I guess I just go with the premise that even someone like Hitler gets love and compassion when they die. And it's kind of a sad thought, but I think it might be true.
Yeah, one thing I can say about the Hitlers of the earth, when they have their eternal, infinite existence, they will, for eternity, know that those were the decisions they made on earthly life, and they will vividly understand the harm and destruction that their free will choices on earth caused. And that will be their burden that they have to bear in their consciousness for the rest of their eternal existence. And that's a lot. One could understand, given that baggage, why the Hitlers might choose to be more comfortable in the afterlife, to make a free will choice to exist with other evil beings in a hellish realm.
Linda?
Boy, lots to think about. I came late, so I don't know if you already answered a question like this, but can you tell us why we humans don't know the things that you're telling us?
Oh, why we don't know?
Yeah.
Right. The unearthly realm or heavenly realm it's a radically different environment. Time is essentially non-existent. It's a non-physical realm. The afterlife is not a geographically separate physical realm like we know on Earth. Like I say, time doesn't exist. There doesn't seem to be the physicality. Movement is non-physical. Communication is essentially always telepathic. So as best I can tell, we on Earth can understand or process or be aware of physical phenomena. And we're very good at that through our physics, through our other branches of science. We're able to characterize physical phenomena, but the non-physical phenomena, we can't measure that. We can't know that. It's really the only way that we can understand the non-physical, or the spiritual, if you will, are through near-death experience and related experiences. So I think that's why these are so important. They're literally the only conceivable portal that we have here on Earth in our physical bodily existence to understand the non-physical and the eternal and the infinite. So I think that explains why we don't know that, or why it's rare that we encounter that type of information or awareness or experience in our earthly life. I would submit that's probably a protective mechanism for us to continue our existence of our physical life. If we as physical beings had the choice, especially if we could make that regularly throughout our physical life, I will tell you, the overwhelming majority of people living their physical earthly lives that they deeply got, understood, and were aware of the overwhelming beauty, love, oneness, and literally the home that exists for our souls on the other life, that it would be very hard for people to continue their physical, earthly, difficult, complex life full of fears, wants, needs, given if they could choose to quickly transition to the afterlife. I'm pretty sure the great majority of people would, and you wouldn't really be able to maintain a physical life the way we know it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jeffrey. I'm on it.
Yes.
My name is Jonathan Fraser, and I was going to ask if you could bridge your research with research that's being done. I believe there's a person named Arbach with sort of psychic dreaming, out-of-body experiences is one area of overlap. Mm-hmm. And there are many ways, obviously, so I can just leave it there. And thank you.
Yeah. I have a pretty deep knowledge of near-death experience and some related things, but I just, unfortunately, and I'm working full time and I'm dang busy as a doctor, so I haven't had the time to really explore, that particular researcher's work. But there's no doubt about it. Spiritual experiences are, by their very definition, real. There are multiple experiences that we can have, near-death experiences and others, that all converge on a better understanding of reality. So, that type of dreaming or psychic phenomenon, if done, if utilized, if is bounded by understanding that it is another insight into reality, is yet another piece of the puzzle that we all have here in our earthly life. And again, all very, very important. And while I'm at it, I'm glad that there are many different paths to that understanding of a greater reality, because what we don't know about the spiritual experiences, near-death experiences, and all other related experiences, what we don't know far outweighs what we do know. So all of those of you, every one of you in this audience, we're all literally pioneers in coming to better understand this radically important concepts of the spiritual and the greater understanding of reality. And obviously, I hope we can all process that and move forward in our understanding, share it with the world, because gosh, the world, I think now more than ever, really needs the understandings of these deeper spiritual concepts, the love, the unity, the oneness, and that we're all together, and that we have an afterlife, and that's our destiny, each and every one of us.
Thank you, Jeffrey. Okay. And I simply, not to make a shameless plug, but for what Susanna and Sanctuary of Earth and IONS have been doing, say this to the assembled group and those online, that through lucid dreaming, channeling, clairaudience, that there's ways that we can develop, and it kind of goes to answering Linda's question earlier, is that, or meditation, many ways that we are being told that we actually came here with knowing, and perhaps simply learned a lot of other things that helped block that. And thank you.
Yeah, thanks. Like I say, what we don't know about these paths towards truth far outweighs what we do know. We're all pioneers, and that is, in one sense, sad that we have so much to learn, and yet very exciting that we have a lot to learn. So, yeah.
I am on. Are we at the end of our questions? Jeffrey, that was an absolutely wonderful presentation. I knew it would be, and an exceptional example of why and how this Richmond IONS community group has been so blessed for so long. And so we are very, very deeply grateful for your taking the time to spend with us this morning. And so thank you very, very much. I'd like to ask everybody to give you a big hand. If those online, take yourself off mute.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, great group, great questions.
Thank you. I'd like to say that Price, I and many others in this group, Price, have had our own a number of other lifetime experiences. You know, that we've some by regression, some by spontaneously, and so forth. And in response to your question about whether a violent death results in the same sort of array of experiences of love, the answer is absolutely yes. From if there's any validity to the spontaneous other lifetime experiences that I have encountered in my own life. So, that's all. All right, folks, that wraps up this meeting. We have, for those who are not familiar, we have a potluck lunch that's in the hallway, and we those who have not been here before, if you're not on our list, we have a pad on the table by the door. We'd love to have you get our monthly flyer, and so you'll know what meetings we're having. Our next meeting will be on the the 16th of December, and that will be a speaker from Baltimore named Sonny Beach. He'll bring us his own brand of metaphysics, and I'm sure it's going to be extremely interesting. We have a potluck lunch, as I say, whether you brought any food to contribute or not, it's available to all. And thank you very much for being here, and thank you for supporting our Richmond IONS Community Group. And again, Jeffrey, thank you so much for being with us this morning.
Yeah, thank you. Great talk. Enjoyed it very much. Thank you all.
Bye-bye.
Thank you very much. It's great.
Okay. So we have to skedaddle. So I'm going to close the meeting for everybody, and we'll see you next month.